Hey everyone, it's Richard Metalfan here, bringing you guys an old school album review. And today we're going to be talking about this album's 15th anniversary. It's from one of my favorite bands. We just talked about their new album a few days ago, so now we're just going back in time 15 years ago to the year 2006 with the release of Trivium's third album entitled The Crusade, the band's third album released on October 11, 2006 through Roadrunner Records. Now, this follows up their previous album, which came out in 2005, Ascendancy, which, in my opinion, is still Trivium's best album, period. But then, compared from Ascendancy to The Crusade, Trivium had changed things up a bit. But from what I heard in some interviews, and according to Matt Heafy, he said that he was trying to rebel against the people that didn't like them, and the result was to create something that was opposite of the Ascendancy, which was the Crusade. And this album, it's totally a complete 180 from Trivium. One thing they could pretty much abandon, pretty much all the screaming on this album. There's a couple parts with there, but it's mostly just cleany, kind of thrashy, gruffy vocals, which a lot of people compare Matt Heafy's vocals to James Hetfield from Metallica. They all pretty much sound almost similar. And one thing, just musically, a lot of people still label Trivium as metalcore, which I honestly never really considered them that at all. I mean, they have a little bit in here or there, so I can understand that, but I honestly don't consider them metalcore at all. But they just kind of go for this album. They went with more of a thrash route, or just like those old school thrash bands like Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, bands like that. And I think this is totally different. I pretty much dig everything that Trivium has, from even going back to their debut Ember to Inferno to, of course, their latest album In the Court of the Dragon. And I know a lot of people will shit on this album, and I'm like, I can understand why, with going from the best album ever, Ascendancy, to this, as it's totally different. But it's not entirely shit. I mean, sure, there's some things that I wish they could have done better, but it's not that bad. That's just one thing to note. Matt Heafy's voice, it just, no screaming on this album. Well, there's only two songs where it briefly comes back, but just mostly just the cleany, kind of gruffy, kind of clean voice. And just the instrumentation on this album is tight. Matt Heafy and Corey Bulio's guitar playing is pretty tight. The bass on this album is pretty audible. I think Paulo really stepped it up on this, and he also does a lot more of the songwriting on here, contributed a lot more here than on Ascendancy. And drumming wise, Travis Smith, their former drummer, does a great job on the drums. So without further ado, let's dive into this album track by track. Now, starting things off is Ignition. Now, Ignition sort of sets the whole mood and whole vibe for the whole album. It pretty much, the attempts of thrash are noticeable, as well as Matt's sort of vocal style at the time. And the riffing is a lot more technical and a lot faster than it is on Ascendancy. And the chorus is, in my opinion, one of the best on this album. And this song moves at a really quick pace, and it's just pretty much over in less than 4 minutes. It just has I just love the chorus. It's ignition, inception, running is a fugue to destruction. It's just really catchy, and the song just leads right into the next song, which is Detonation, which starts out just really just menacing, and it almost kind of sounds especially the first half of the song, reminds you a little bit of Master of Puppets era Metallica, but then morphing into another solo, which sounds really Slayerish, and it has almost a chorusy that kind of sounds a lot like melodic at times, with "and now the ground we call a home become the home." It's just a really catchy part, and I especially love the harmony near the end with the dual guitars. It's another highlight on here. Next song on the album is called Entrance of the Conflagration. And now this is actually, I believe, the first single from The Crusade, and it continues the momentum set by Ignition and Detonation, with some more kind of fasty, kind of thrash-like riffs, and a more technical breakdown, and a very nice solo to go along with it. Next up, we get to Anthem, We Are the Fire. Now, this song is a very interesting song. It's a song that really must grow with you, depending on if you like it or not. A lot of people like it, and a lot of people don't like it. The verses have a bit of a anthemic call to arms, and there's also that bridge, I think is kind of And it's just the typical whoas and yeahs, which I just it doesn't, that part doesn't do it for me. But I think Anthem, other than that, Anthem's pretty solid. Then we get to Unrepentant. Now, Unrepentant features some decent tempo changes and some sufficiently interesting riffs. And then the Metallica influence on this song is strong. And the intro riff just sounds so much like Through the Never. And the pre-chorus riffs are nice, and I think they're pretty enjoyable. And this solo in this song is a good blend of like melody and mindless shred. It's something you hardly see on this album. Then we move on to And Sadness Will Sear. And Sadness Will Sear is kind of where the album kind of slows down a little bit. It's more of a mid-tempo song. It also has a little bit of a darker kind of like mood and tone to it. Becoming the Dragon is up next. Now, I actually dig this song, and this song, like I mentioned before, this is one of the brief moments you hear the screaming, especially right near the like there's like that never stops right before there's like that little instrumental break, and then there's some really sick guitar solos on here. And then the first time ever in Trivium's catalog, we finally get a bass solo from Paulo Gagliotto at the end. And I just think, in my opinion, Paulo is one of the most underrated bassists in metal still going today. And I just love just the solo and just like the tappy thing, which when I first heard the song years ago, I didn't even know it was a bass. I thought it was a guitar, but as soon as I saw the music video for the song, it was like, wow, I was really impressed. And it's still one of my favorite songs and one of the best songs from the Crusade, if you ask me. And then we get to the next song, which is called To the Rats. Now, To the Rats features starts off very high speed kind of riff, which is not something like Kill 'Em All. And I know I keep saying and comparing the Trivium to Metallica a lot, but it's hard not to. It just sounds almost like that. But Matt's vocals on here are pretty odd in this song. It's hard to place, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of like Tom's Arias from Slayers on God Hates Us All. But then this song has a great riff and a powerful chorus. I feel like the bridge kills it a little bit with Matt screaming, "This is to the rats," repetitively, and it feels like very generic and bland. And the bridge has some good inspiration behind it, but I feel like the song had potential to be good. Next up is This World Can't Tear Us Apart, which in my opinion is the most melodic song on here. It has, just in terms of like the vocals and the instrumentation, that it's very melodic in there. And like I said, in my opinion, probably the melodic song on the Crusade. Next up, we get to Tread the Floods. Now, Tread the Floods is, in my opinion, another standout on this album. Has some nice lead work that leads into a bland but good verse riff and some harmonizing parts. And the chorus reaches the intro riff with some diving double bass, and it works pretty well. And the solo on the song is incredible. It pretty much moves the song, and it doesn't sound like just pointless, just guitar wankery. Next up is Contempt Breeds Contamination. Now, this song isn't that bad. It has the use of like 7-string guitars, and the intro kind of sounds a little bit sloppy, attempt at death metal, and the verses are pretty bad. The chorus, in my opinion, is the saving grace of the song. It's very catchy, it pulls the song out, and the solo riff is kind of melodically and isn't bad. But I feel like the repeating of Contempt Breeds Contamination kind of sounds a little bit annoying over like a riff that sounds like Slipknot a bit. Then we get to the infamous song on the album, which is called The Rising. Now, The Rising, a lot of people say is one of Trivium's worst songs ever, and even the band themselves say it, and I can understand why. It just sounds like, it doesn't even sound like Trivium a bit at all. And there's even a video made for this song, which has them in like a TV or something. It's just a very weird song, and I feel like the ideas were there, but I just wish it could have been more well executed. And then we close things out with the title track of the album, The Crusade. Now this song is an 8-minute instrumental, and it really showcases what the band could do. Some really sick guitar work and some sick leads, and just I love the tapping intro from tapping like solos from Matt and Corey, and then there's a little bass solo from Paulo again, another bass solo, just like we heard on Becoming the Dragon, and then it just fades out, and I think that's a really good song, and I honestly consider this like their own Orion in a way. And then there's actually 2 bonus tracks from this album. I don't have it, it's not on the CD, I think it's on the digital version, or if you get the Anthem We Are the Fire CD single. And the 2 songs I would like to also talk about are Broken One and Vengeance. Now, Broken One is another good song, is a great song. Starts off with a great bass intro from Paulo, and it's a very mid-paced song, and I honestly feel like this should, if I had to choose, I would have put Broken One in place of The Rising. I just think it would have just made the album a little bit better. They're not to say that this album is completely shit. I mean, if it wasn't shit, I wouldn't be having a physical copy right here. And then we have Vengeance, another pretty good song, and another, in my opinion, one of the most underrated Trivium songs to date. Overall, The Crusade by Trivium is a pretty good album. I know, not one of my favorites, but it's still a pretty solid album. So if I have to give this album a score, I'm going to give The Crusade by Trivium a solid 8 or an 8.5 out of 10. So yeah, that's my review of the album, guys. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about the album, and I'll see you all in the next video. And as always, keep it metal.